Have you ever found yourself wide awake at 3 in the morning, your mind racing, a sense of panic rising in your chest as you stare into the darkness? You check the clock. You calculate the dwindling hours until your alarm will scream, "What is wrong with me? Why can't I just sleep like a normal person?" We spend billions of dollars on sleep aids, from weighted blankets and white noise machines, prescription pills, and high-tech tracking apps, all in a desperate quest for one simple thing: uninterrupted 8 hours of sleep. We've been told this is a gold standard, the biological necessity, the very definition of a good night's rest. But what if I told you that this entire belief is a modern lie? What if I told you that the key to perfect, restorative sleep isn't found in a futuristic gadget, but in a forgotten secret, locked away in the annals of history for hundreds of years? What if the anxiety you feel when you wake in the dead of night isn't a sign that you're broken, but a faint, ancestral echo of a sleep pattern that was once the most natural thing in the world? We begin a journey that will shatter everything you thought you knew about sleep. We're not just going back in time. We are venturing into the medieval world, a time we often dismiss as primitive and unenlightened. In the heart of their dimly lit castles and humble cottages, these ancestors of ours held profound wisdom about the rhythms of the human body that we have completely forgotten, in a way that was more synchronized with our biology than anything we practice today. Prepare to discover the lost art of segmented sleep, a practice so powerful it could not only cure our modern epidemic of insomnia, but also unlock new realms of creativity, connection, and peace. Forget everything you've been taught. The most revolutionary secret to a perfect night's sleep is not in the future. It has been waiting for us in the past. Imagine a world without the tyrannical glow of a single electric light. When the sun dipped below the horizon, a profound and comprehensive darkness fell across the land. For the medieval person, this wasn't an inconvenience to be conquered with technology, non-negotiable signal. It was the world's bedtime story. As dusk settled around 9 o'clock, families would extinguish their costly candles or tallow lamps and surrender to the night. They would enter what they called their first sleep. This wasn't a light nap. It was a deep, profound slumber that would last for about 4 hours. Something remarkable would happen around midnight or 1 in the morning. But this wasn't the jarring, anxiety-ridden awakening we experience. It was gentle, natural, and expected, lasting 1 to 3 hours. It was known as the watch. It wasn't a frustrating interruption. It was an entirely different state of being, a cherished and productive part of their day that existed in the stillness of the night. Historical records, from personal diaries and court documents to medical texts and literature, are filled with references so deeply ingrained in the fabric of life that it required no special explanation. It was simply the way humans slept. This wasn't just a European phenomenon. Evidence of this segmented sleep pattern has been found across the globe, in cultures far removed from the stone castles of England or the vineyards of France. It suggests that this wasn't a cultural quirk, but a fundamental human rhythm. In the quiet solitude of the watch, the medieval world came alive in a different way. This was a time for activities that the bustling daylight hours couldn't accommodate. For the devout, it was the most sacred time for prayer and contemplation. The world was silent, the distractions of the day were gone, and the connection to the divine felt more immediate and profound. Monasteries scheduled their most important vigils during this midnight watch, believing it was when the veil between worlds was thinnest. It was a time for intellectual pursuit. Scholars and writers treasured the uninterrupted focus the watch provided. They would read by the faint light of the moon or the embers of the hearth, their minds sharp and unburdened by the day's demands. Some of the most profound works of medieval literature and philosophy were likely penned during these quiet, contemplative hours. It was a period of heightened creativity, a secret wellspring of ideas that flowed most freely when the rest of the world was in its first slumber. But the watch was also deeply social. For a husband and wife, it offered a window of privacy and connection that was rare in the often crowded conditions of a medieval household. It was a time for quiet conversation, for sharing thoughts and feelings without interruption. In fact, many medieval medical texts specifically recommended the watch as the ideal time for marital intimacy. They believed that couples were more relaxed and conception was more likely after the first restorative sleep. It was a scheduled, intentional time for romance, woven into the very fabric of their nightly rhythm. This was also a time for simple chores, for mending clothes, tending to fire, or preparing for the day ahead. Some would even use the time to visit neighbors, sharing a quiet drink or a bit of gossip in the tranquil darkness. Second Life that unfolded across the land every night, a period of peace, creativity, and connection that has been completely erased from our modern experience. After an hour or two of this peaceful wakefulness, As a natural drowsiness returned, they would retreat for their second sleep, a slumber that would last until first light of dawn. They awoke with the sun, not feeling groggy or sleep-deprived, but genuinely refreshed, having completed a sleep cycle that was perfectly attuned to their biology. This historical evidence was dismissed as a curiosity. In the 1990s, a prominent psychiatrist decided to put this ancestral pattern to the test. In a landmark experiment, a group of volunteers was plunged into a world devoid of artificial light. Their only illumination came from the sun. For 14 hours each day, they were confined to a dark room, mimicking the long nights of a medieval winter. At first, the volunteers slept in a single, consolidated block, just as we do today. But after a few weeks, a dramatic shift occurred. Their bodies, freed from the influence of artificial light, began to remember. One by one, they spontaneously reverted to the exact segmented sleep pattern found in historical texts. They would sleep for about 4 hours, wake naturally for a period of 1 to 3 hours, and then fall back asleep until morning. What was most astonishing, however, was what they reported during their midnight watch. They didn't feel anxious or frustrated. They described a state of consciousness unlike anything in their normal waking life. They felt an extraordinary sense of peace, a calm, meditative alertness. Their minds were quiet yet clear. It was a period of profound tranquility that they began to look forward to each night. Brain scans taken during this period revealed heightened levels of prolactin, a hormone associated with feelings of calm and relaxation, similar to the state experienced after meditation. Our ancestors hadn't just stumbled upon a quirky sleep schedule. They had lived in harmony with a biological rhythm that brought with it a unique and powerful state of consciousness, a state of peaceful creativity and reflection that we have medicated and pathologized out of existence. The anxiety we feel when we wake in the night is not the problem itself. It's our reaction to it. It's the fear that our sleep is broken, a fear born from the loss of this ancient wisdom. What if that midnight waking isn't insomnia, but an invitation from our own biology to enter that forgotten kingdom of peaceful midnight consciousness? The question that echoes through the centuries is, if the segmented sleep pattern was so natural, so beneficial, what powerful force could have possibly erased it from human behavior? The answer isn't a mystery. The Industrial Revolution, with the dawn of the late 18th and early 19th centuries, humanity embarked on a radical new relationship with the night. The invention of gas lighting and later, the widespread adoption of the electric light bulb, was seen as a triumphant victory over darkness. For the first time in human history, the day could be artificially extended. Streets, factories, and homes could be illuminated around the clock. The night was no longer a mandatory period of rest. It was a new frontier for productivity and entertainment. This technological shift coincided with a new economic reality. Factories began to operate on rigid schedules, demanding that workers be present and productive at specific, clock-driven times. Sun-based rhythms of agrarian life were replaced by the unforgiving timetable of industrial capitalism. There was no room in this new world for a leisurely, 2-hour watch in the middle of the night. Sleep became a consolidated, efficient block of time, something to be done as quickly as possible to prepare for another long day of labor. Slowly at first, and then with astonishing speed, the references to first and second sleep began to vanish from letters, diaries. By the early 20th century, the memory of segmented sleep was almost completely gone. Society had collectively retrained itself to sleep in one single block. Waking in the middle of the night was no longer seen as natural, a disorder, a failure of efficiency. And it is no coincidence that the first widespread medical complaints about what we now call sleep maintenance insomnia appear in medical literature from the late 19th century, precisely as artificial lighting became commonplace. We didn't evolve out of segmented sleep. We were forced out of it. We traded a sleep pattern that was deeply aligned with our biology for one that served the demands of industry, and we are still paying the price. The epidemic of sleep disorders, the pervasive anxiety around sleep, the billions we spend trying to force our bodies into an unnatural pattern. These are the enduring legacies of that great betrayal of the night. We have forgotten that sleep is not a mechanical process of recharging, but a delicate dance with our own internal rhythms, rhythms that were perfected over millennia and abandoned in just a few generations. Reclaiming the wisdom of medieval sleep is not about rejecting modernity. It's about recognizing that in our quest for progress, we may have left behind something of immense and irreplaceable value. While the pattern of our sleep is a forgotten treasure, the very surface upon which our ancestors holds its own shocking and brilliant secrets. When we picture a medieval bed, our minds conjure images of discomfort, lumpy sacks of straw on a cold, and for the poorest in society. That wasn't far from the truth. They slept on simple pallets, thin mattresses stuffed with straw or rushes that could be rolled up and stored during the day. But even in this humble object, there was a stroke of genius we've completely lost. These straw pallets were not meant to last a decade, slowly accumulating dust mites, allergens, and sagging indentations like they were designed to be disposable. After the harvest, the old straw will be discarded and the mattress ticking. A tightly woven canvas bag will be refilled with fresh, a brand new mattress every single year. It was a system that was not only economical and sustainable, but also incredibly hygienic. No gradual degradation of support, no buildup of filth. It was an annual reset as we ascend the social ladder. The medieval mattress transforms into a sophisticated piece of ergonomic engineering. The wealthy didn't just sleep on better straw. They slept on a complex, layered system designed for ultimate comfort and support. The foundation might be a firm mattress stuffed with tightly packed wool or horsehair. Horsehair, in particular, was prized for its resilience and breathability. It provided a supportive base that didn't trap heat or moisture, a natural cooling technology that modern companies now try to replicate with synthetic gels and foams. On top of this firm base would lie the true symbol of luxury. This was a massive, billowy mattress filled with the softest goose or duck down. But not just any feathers would do. The most coveted filling was eider down, harvested from the nest of the eider duck. These ducks lined their nests with the finest, softest down from their own chests to insulate their eggs. Medieval harvesters knew that this precious down could only be collected after the ducklings had hatched and left the nest. It was a sustainable, symbiotic relationship with nature. The feather bed provided a cloud-like softness that cushioned the body, while the firm base below prevented the sinking, unsupportive feeling that a purely soft mattress can cause. It was a perfect marriage of plush comfort and ergonomic support, a system far more customizable and breathable than a single block of memory foam. So strange and so unsettling to our modern sensibilities that it reveals the depths of their lost wisdom. Yes, you read that correctly. In the highest echelons of society, mattresses stuffed with human hair were considered the pinnacle of luxury and were so valuable they were passed down in wills alongside land and jewels. Before you recoil in disgust, consider the science. Human hair is a remarkable material. It is naturally antimicrobial and resistant to pests. It wicks moisture away from the body with incredible efficiency, keeping a sleeper dry and comfortable. It is exceptionally resilient, firm support that doesn't break down over time. And it is a phenomenal temperature regulator, staying cool in the summer and warm in the winter. Preparing a hair mattress was an art form. The hair was meticulously collected, cleaned, and processed to create a filling that was supportive, yielding, and incredibly durable. Sleeping on a hair mattress wasn't just a status symbol. It was an investment in perfect spinal alignment and restorative rest. Modern luxury bed makers have rediscovered the virtues of these natural materials, selling mattresses filled with horsehair, wool, and cashmere for tens of thousands of dollars, marketing them as revolutionary innovations. They are not innovations. They are rediscovered truths that medieval artisans understood centuries ago. They knew that the ideal sleep surface wasn't single, uniform material, but dynamic. They understood that natural fibers work in harmony with the body's own temperature and moisture regulation. They built beds not for a 10-year lifespan, but for generations, with materials that could be cleaned, replenished, and customized. They were not primitive sleepers. They were sleep engineers of the highest order, using the power of the natural world to craft a perfect sanctuary for rest. Synthetic mattresses may be convenient, but they are a pale imitation of the breathable, ergonomic, and sustainable sleep systems our ancestors perfected. Beyond the intricate science of their mattresses, the medieval world held a radically different understanding of the sleeping environment itself. In our modern culture, the private bedroom is a sacred space, an individual sanctuary. The idea of sharing our sleeping quarters with anyone other than a partner is often seen as an uncomfortable last resort. For our medieval ancestors, the opposite was true. Sleeping alone was considered strange, dangerous, and deeply undesirable. Picture the great hall of a medieval castle. By day, it was the bustling center of life. By night, it transformed into a vast communal dormitory. The lord and lady might have a large, curtained bed at one end of the hall, offering a sliver of privacy. But all around them, the room would be filled with sleeping bodies, their personal servants, trusted knights, visiting guests, and members of the extended family, would all be spread out on pallets and simper beds across the floor. In a peasant's cottage, the entire family, often including a servant or two, would sleep together in a single room, huddled together for warmth. Our modern minds immediately recoil at the thought, the lack of privacy, the noise, the smells. It sounds like a recipe for a terrible night's sleep. For our ancestors, this communal sleeping arrangement was a source of profound comfort, safety, and psychological well-being. First and foremost, a practical solution to a harsh reality. Central heating did not exist, especially in winter, were dangerously cold. The most effective source of heat, huddling together in a shared space, was a simple and effective survival strategy, a collective blanket of shared body heat, from the lord to the lowest servant, warmer and safer. But the benefits went far beyond mere thermoregulation. Communal sleeping provided an immense sense of security, both physical and psychological. In a world where banditry, raids, and house fires were real and present dangers, there was safety in numbers. A lone sleeper was a vulnerable target. A room full of sleepers was a community watch, where any unusual sound or disturbance would instantly alert others. This sense of security extended into the psychological realm. We now know that sleeping in close proximity to trusted others lowers stress hormones like cortisol and promotes the release of oxytocin, the bonding hormone. The gentle, rhythmic sounds of other people breathing, the simple knowledge that you're not alone in the darkness, all of this acts as a powerful, natural anxiety reducer. For a medieval person living in a world they believed was populated by demons, witches, and malevolent spirits, sleeping alone was terrifying. The presence of their community was a powerful shield against the terrors of night, both real and imagined. This nightly gathering also forged incredibly strong social bonds. Sharing a sleeping space is an act of profound trust. It breaks down social barriers and fosters a sense of shared identity and mutual reliance. In the medieval world, being invited to share a bed or a sleeping chamber was a sign of friendship, alliance, and honor. It created a level of intimacy and community cohesion that is difficult for us to imagine in our modern, atomized lives. Children grew up surrounded by the comforting presence of their family and community, never experiencing the nighttime separation anxiety that plagues so many modern children. They learned from infancy that the night was a time of safety and togetherness, not isolation and fear. Communal sleeping requires sophisticated social etiquette. There were unwritten rules about how to manage snoring, restlessness, and personal space. But these challenges were navigated through cooperation and consideration, reinforcing the very social skills that held their communities together. We prize our private, silent, temperature-controlled bedrooms. We see them as the ideal environment for rest. But in doing so, we have created a culture of isolated sleeping that may be contributing to our collective anxiety. We have forgotten the profound psychological comfort that comes from being part of a sleeping tribe. We may have gained privacy, but we may have lost a deeper sense of security and connection that our ancestors understood as essential to a truly peaceful night's rest. In the medieval mind, the boundary between the sleeping world and the supernatural realm was perilously thin. Sleep was not just a state of physical rest. It was a journey into a landscape fraught with both divine messages and demonic threats. This belief system profoundly shaped their experience of night, turning common sleep phenomena into events of terrifying spiritual significance. The most dramatic example of this is their understanding of sleep paralysis. Today, science explains this experience as a harmless glitch in our sleep cycle, a state of sleep atonia where the mind awakens before the body has regained muscle control. The terrifying hallucinations, the sense of presence in a room, the crushing weight on the chest, are understood as hypnagogic dream states bleeding into waking consciousness. For the 8% of the modern population who experience it, it is frightening but ultimately explainable. For a medieval person, however, this was no neurological hiccup. Physical assault by a malevolent entity, the mare or the old hag. They believed a demon or a witch would sit upon a sleeper's chest, attempting to suffocate them or steal their soul through their open mouth. The word nightmare originally referred not to a bad dream, but specifically to this horrifying experience of being ridden by the mare. This cultural belief created a vicious cycle of terror. The more afraid someone was of a nighttime attack, the more stress and anxiety they would feel about going to sleep. We now know that stress and anxiety are major triggers for sleep paralysis. The very fear of the mare made its visitations more likely. When an episode did occur, it was seen as confirmation of the supernatural threat, which in turn deepened the fear, leading to more episodes. It was a self-perpetuating engine of psychological torture, amplified by the beliefs of the entire community. people developed elaborate rituals to protect themselves. They would sleep with iron knives under their pillows, as iron was believed to repel evil spirits. They would place their shoes with the toes pointing away from the bed, hoping to confuse any approaching demon. These practices, while born of superstition, had an unintended psychological benefit. They provided a sense of control. By performing these rituals, a person could feel they were actively doing something to protect themselves, which could, in turn, lower their anxiety and make an episode less likely. It was an accidental form of cognitive behavioral therapy, wrapped in the language of folklore. While the mare represented the terrors of the night, dreams were the sacred theater of the soul. Modern, secular world, we tend to dismiss dreams as the random firings of neurons, the brain's way of cleaning out the day's mental junk. Dreams were anything but random. They were a primary channel of communication. A dream could be a direct message from God, a prophecy of the future, a visit from a deceased loved one offering guidance, or a temptation sent by the devil to test one's faith. Dream interpretation was a highly respected and serious discipline. Great thinkers developed complex systems for classifying dreams, distinguishing between those caused by indigestion, the insomnium, and those that were true prophetic visions of visio. Professional dream interpreters were valued advisors in the courts of kings. A monarch might delay a battle or a major political decision based on the interpretation of a single dream. The story of Joan of Arc, the peasant girl who led an army based on her divine visions, is the most famous example of how seriously this dream culture was taken. Experience in a state between waking and sleeping were accepted as divine mandate, changing the course of European history. This deep engagement with the dream world meant that medieval people had a much richer and more integrated inner life. They paid attention to their dreams. They discussed them. They sought meaning in them. The dream journal wasn't a modern therapeutic tool. It was a vital record of their spiritual journey. This constant dialogue with their subconscious mind likely gave them a level of self-awareness and psychological insight that we, with our tendency to ignore our inner landscapes, often lack. They understood that the mind did not simply shut off at night. It entered a different and equally important mode of being, one that held wisdom, warnings, and profound truths. By seeing the supernatural in their sleep, they were forced to engage with the deepest parts of their own psyche, in a way we have long since forgotten. From the spiritual significance of dreams to the very posture one adopted in slumber, no aspect of medieval sleep was left to chance. Our modern approach to sleeping positions is purely a matter of personal comfort. We toss and turn, seeking the posture that feels best, without a second thought. For our medieval ancestors, the way you arrange your body in bed was a matter of moral and spiritual consequence, a nightly declaration of your soul's allegiance. Church authorities and moral treatises of the time laid out a surprisingly detailed and rigid set of rules for righteous sleeping. The most dangerous and condemned position of all was sleeping face down, on one's stomach. This was considered the devil's position. It was believed that sleeping this way was an act of turning your back on God, who was presumed to be above. It was seen as presenting your vulnerable backside to demonic forces, an open invitation for possession or corruption. In some regions, being found sleeping face down could be considered evidence of moral depravity or even witchcraft. The spiritually correct position, endorsed by theologians, was to sleep on your right side. The right side was associated with righteousness and God, while the left side was sinister, a word whose Latin root means left. Sleeping on your right side, often with your hands folded in a prayer-like position, was thought to align your body and soul with the heavens, keeping you safe from nocturnal threats. Lying flat on your back, a position we now call supine, was also viewed with suspicion. This was a position of the dead in their coffins. To sleep this way was seen as tempting fate, mimicking death too closely, and making one vulnerable to being claimed by it before their time. This is why many medieval beds, particularly those of the wealthy, were designed with large bolsters and pillows that propped the sleeper up at a significant angle, keeping them in a semi-seated position throughout the night. It is a stunning historical irony that modern sleep science often recommends the very positions that medieval. Sleeping on one's stomach can be beneficial for those with sleep apnea, as it helps to keep the airway open. Sleeping on the left side is often recommended for pregnant women and those with acid reflux, as it can improve circulation and digestion. And sleeping on one's back is considered optimal for spinal alignment. The postures our ancestors demonized are, in many cases, the healthiest of the human body. This obsession with spiritual posture extended to the arrangement of couples in the marital bed. The husband, as the head of the household, was to sleep on the dominant right side of the bed. The wife was to take the subordinate left side. On certain holy days or during periods of religious fasting, some texts even recommended that a couple sleep with a board or a drawn sword placed between them, a practice known as a chaste bed, to prevent any temptation to lust. The psychological toll of these rules must have been immense. Imagine the anxiety of a person who naturally found comfort sleeping on their stomach, forced to fight their own body's instincts every night for fear of spiritual damnation. Every unconscious turn in the night could be a potential sin, which should be released from the cares of the day, became another arena for constant vigilance and moral anxiety. The most profound lesson we can draw from this is not just that their beliefs were unscientific, but how deeply our mindset affects our experience of rest. By loading sleep with such a heavy weight of rules and fears, they inadvertently created a culture of sleep anxiety. We have our own modern version of this. We obsess over getting exactly 8 hours. We track our sleep stages with apps. We worry that we're doing it wrong. Though our rules are based on science rather than superstition, the result is the same. We turn rest into a performance, a task to be accomplished correctly, rather than a natural state to be surrendered to. Our ancestors, in their own way, show us the danger of overthinking sleep. They reveal that whether the rules come from a priest or a podcast, a rigid, anxious approach to sleep is timelessly counterproductive to the simple, profound act of letting go. As we reach the culmination of our journey into the medieval night, we must ask the most important question of all. What does this mean for us here and now? It is fascinating to learn about segmented sleep, hair mattresses, and communal dormitories. But can this ancient wisdom truly be applied to our hectic 21st century lives? The answer is a resounding yes. We don't need to abandon our modern world to reclaim the benefits of ancestral sleep. We can integrate these principles in practical, powerful ways. First, and perhaps most transformatively, we must change our relationship with waking in the night. The next time you find yourself awake at 2 a.m., do not see it as a failure. Do not reach for your phone. Do not let anxiety take hold. Instead, embrace it. Recognize this as a watch, a natural part of your biological rhythm. Get out of bed, keep the lights dim, and do something quiet and calming. Read a few pages of a book, write in a journal, or simply sit in the quiet darkness and breathe. By removing anxiety associated with this waking period, you'll be astonished at how much easier it is to naturally drift back into your second sleep when your body is ready. You are not broken. Embrace the seasonal nature of sleep. Been conditioned to believe in a rigid, one-size-fits-all 8-hour requirement. Our ancestors knew this was nonsense. Their sleep ebbed and flowed with the seasons. Try to honor this natural rhythm in a small way. In the darker, colder months of winter, allow yourself to go to bed a little earlier and sleep a little longer. Your body is naturally inclined towards more rest and recuperation during this time. In the bright, long days of summer, it's natural to have a slightly shorter sleep schedule. Listen to your body's cues instead of the tyranny of the clock. Third, recreate the medieval evening wind down. Our ancestors didn't go from a state of high stimulation straight to bed. They had a long, gradual transition period dictated by the setting sun. We can mimic this. Establish a digital sunset in your home. At least an hour before you plan to sleep, turn off all screens, televisions, laptops, and phones. The blue light from these devices is a powerful signal to your brain to stay awake. Instead, switch to dim, warm lighting. Light a candle. Read a physical book. Have a quiet conversation with a loved one. Do some gentle stretching. Create a peaceful, low-stimulation environment that signals to your body and mind that the day is over and it is time to prepare for rest. Fourth, optimize your sleep sanctuary using medieval principles. Make your bedroom as dark, cool, and quiet as possible. Invest in blackout curtains to block out artificial light pollution. Keep the temperature on the cooler side, as a drop in body temperature is a key trigger for sleep. While we may not want to sleep on a straw pallet, we can choose natural, breathable materials for our bedding, like wool, cotton, or linen, which are far better at regulating temperature and moisture than synthetic fabrics. Let go of sleep perfectionism. Our ancestors didn't have sleep tracking apps. They judged the quality of their sleep by how they felt the next day. Stop obsessing over the data. The anxiety generated by trying to achieve a perfect sleep score can itself be a major cause of poor sleep. Trust your body. It has millions of years of evolutionary wisdom. Your only job is to create the right conditions and then surrender to the process. Finally, rediscover the security of social sleep, even in a modern context. While we may not be returning to communal great halls, we can acknowledge a profound human need for connection and safety during our most vulnerable state. For couples, prioritizing a shared, peaceful bedtime ritual can strengthen bonds. For those who live alone, creating a sense of security through comforting objects, a pet, or even a calming audio track of gentle, rhythmic sounds can help ease the anxiety of isolation. The wisdom of the medieval world is not a call to abandon progress. It is an invitation to find balance. It is a reminder that some of the most profound truths about our own biology are not new discoveries, but ancient memories waiting to be reawakened. By weaving these timeless principles into the fabric of our modern lives, we can begin to heal our fraught relationship with the night. We can reclaim a form of sleep that is deeper, more restorative, and more connected to the very core of what it means to be human. The greatest sleep innovation of the 21st century may be the rediscovery of the 13th.